JT Crowley is Talking Books. On the show, you'll hear from emerging talent and seasoned veterans from around the world.
Hello, I'm JT Crowley. I'm the host of Talking Books show on Web Talk Radio. And today I welcome back Helmut Portmann to talk about the third book in the Alex Beck Thriller Series, Remora. As I've already said, off screen to Helmut, not only do the books get longer, but the punchlines get better. And the story and the characters, everybody, really do come to life. They're getting better. He's getting the hang of this. And the story is more intense. It's more punchy. It's more thrilling. He really is taking us on a journey with this latest book, Remora.
I'm glad to be back with you and looking forward to the interview.
I think this is our third time, isn't it, this year?
Yes.
Before we reveal the gossip about this book, Helmut, would you briefly remind the audience who you are, where you're from, and what's the backdrop to this latest episode of yours, Remora, and particularly the characters Alex, Catherine, and Eva?
Well, I was born in Switzerland. My family immigrated to the US when I was 8 years old. I'm heavily camouflaged, aber ich kann Deutsch sprechen, wenn ich will. I grew up in around the Atlanta, Georgia area. And once I graduated from university at Georgia Tech, I embarked on a lot of interesting jobs that have taken me all over the world, to all sorts of interesting places, and a lot of adventures. And once I retired, I decided to write action novels based on my real-world experiences. I have worked on a nuclear missile system in Germany during the Cold War. I worked on U.S. submarines in the submarine community, hunting for Soviet submarines and acoustic data, hiding our submarines. I have worked at Navy labs in the U.S., developing unmanned systems programs, the small creatures that go underwater without people in them and on the surface. And I also ran a center that deployed ocean buoys across the Pacific and Atlantic and other parts of the ocean that measured the weather, the climate, and tsunamis. That's pretty much it. And that brings us to the books.
So what's the brief backdrop to this book?
This particular book, Remora, is the third in my series. I'll just give you a brief background. They are best read in sequence if you can do that. That way the characters develop and the storylines develop, and one book leads off the other. In the first book, Adios el Jefe Castro, the hero of the story develops. His name is Alex Beck. He ends up being the protagonist throughout the whole series. He's the common thread, the James Bond, James Bond Jr., if you will.
Love
not
it.
to take too much. And of course, no association with me whatsoever. I deny everything. But basically, he ends up going to work for the CIA, and he becomes involved with two ladies, Catherine Wright and Ana Lopez, who ends up being renamed Eva Lopez after she drives a stiletto through someone's brain at the Cape Canaveral launch complex. You have to read book one to find out about that. But book two takes you through a scenario in the Gulf of Mexico. It's called Phantom of the Gulf. And book three, Remora, it basically revolves around the threat of terrorists, divers, and swimmers, and how CIA deals with that.
It does, everybody. He gets better and better. And yes, you do need to read the books in sequel to understand the stories and the characters. You can't just jump in to look at Remora to start with and then backtrack. You need to go to the first book, then the second, and then this one. And when he's got the others out, those as well. Nothing like a good plug, is there? Okay, let's open the book here, Helmuts. And there are 76 chapters here. They're short, they're punchy, and for you to get your teeth into. Now, we're not going to go in all the chapters, everybody. We'll be here for every day. But Helmut and I have selected several parts of the book that we think will be interesting to you. So we're going to focus on those areas. And that is exactly because we think, well, I think they were the key areas. But once you've listened to this interview and you've read the book, make your own minds up, make your own opinions. Because yes, the whole emphasis here is to highlight the book, not to give the plot away, and to emphasize, as I said, you need to read the books in sequence. So Helmut, let's kickstart this interview off, the conversation off with looking at the first 3 chapters. Nothing like a good place to start right at the very beginning, is there, everybody? And we have an opening scene here, and is, the Persian Gulf locality, a port in Yemen. August 1981, 7 a.m. local time. 2 Iranian-backed Hezbollah scuba divers, kitted out with advanced gears and sophisticated limpet device, approached the USS Cushing, which was brand new. It's a Navy destroyer, having looked up my research, and it cost millions of dollars, and the Americans aren't too pleased with it being destroyed. Not a good start. But here we've got, so what's Alex, Eva, and Catherine going to do about it? They're in a coffee shop in McLean, Virginia. The Revolutionary Guard commanders outside Imam's, the supreme leader in Iran, office. So we've got an explosion, we've got a coffee shop, and we've got the Revolutionary Guard sitting outside the Iranian supreme leader's office. What an opening. Care to open up here?
Yes. As you mentioned, the U.S. Navy destroyer has been lost. It was brand new. And so the Department of Defense loses a destroyer, and with it, their patience. The CIA is asked to step in and help the presidential authority really come up with a way to deal with this. In the second chapter, you see the 3 that we mentioned, the 2 ladies and Alex Beck, directed by their boss at the CIA to go to a Navy laboratory in Panama City, Florida, and learn what the Navy has done in the past about swimmers and divers when they attack Navy ships, or in Vietnam, attacking U.S. soldiers. They go down to the Navy lab, and they learn, but the Navy lab, by the way, and this is true in real life, I worked there for a while, was the Navy's anti-swimmer and anti-diver laboratory during Vietnam. And during the war, you can basically do anything. So lethal force was, included. Now, of course, we're in a kinder, gentler time period, and non-lethal swimmer defense is now the order of business. But they learn by interviewing who I will term the Dr. Strangelove of swimmer defense, long retired gentleman who ran the program during Vietnam. He was in charge of training dolphins and sea lions and doing all sorts of things that you'd have to read the book to learn about. But he basically gives them the background on what was done during Vietnam to counter swimmers and combat divers. If you read the book, you will find a tremendous surprise that when they learn from him how swimmers were best detected underwater from the surface. They find it very shocking, and it's worth a read to learn what they discover there. And by the way, that part is true. So basically, the CIA is going to give the administration plausible deniability by coming up with their own methods of dealing with swimmers and divers, while the Navy is pursuing non-lethal swimmer defense methods. Now, what's really happening in the book is that Alex, Catherine, and Eva are developing into a more complex relationship. They're also developing in their positions within the CIA. They're growing in their duties. Alex, by this point, is now an agent, not an analyst. And the 3 are basically a team that seems to be now getting, their director seems to be in the habit of sending them together to handle problems. This is one of them. So basically, they finish in Panama City, doing their homework. And now we flip in chapter 3 back to Tehran, Iran, where the Revolutionary Guard is waiting outside Imam Khomeini's inner room, basically waiting to tell him how excited they are about their success in sinking the U.S. warship. Now, it turns out that this is a time period when Iran, when the Iran Revolutionary Guard formed up Hezbollah as a surrogate terrorist organization that they would employ. This was the beginning of Hezbollah. At this time, Hezbollah, among other things, sends a large number of scuba divers that they've trained into Germany to learn how to use Draeger rebreather units. A regular scuba system underwater will let bubbles come to the surface and you can detect the scuba diver. A Draeger rebreather is what military divers use to not make bubbles. So they all go to basically learn how to operate these. And you don't do these for sport diving. They're obviously for military applications. And so basically they are formulating their plans to keep building on their success where they've damaged the U.S. warship and sank it, in fact. And so that leads us to the next segment.
It does indeed. Now, I've thought about, where do I put this bit in here? Remora. Now, I understand this is a device, isn't it? This is an underwater.
It is. And I don't want to
I
give
don't want to
away
give too much away here.
Yeah, I'm not going to give away what the remora is. A lot of people would know that a remora is basically a fish that attaches itself to sharks and swims along attached to the sharks underwater via suction cups. And, that's how they feed. In this case, our remora is slightly different, and it's a pretty scary thing, as it turns out, for the terrorists.
So, Helmut, let's venture deeper into the book and explore the goings on in chapters 10 to 12. You take us to Panama City Beach, Florida, a conversation around a swimmer defense, how the US commanders dealt with the Viet Cong sappers during that long protracted conflict, a conversation between Jose, Alex, Ava, Alvin, Bobby, and then to CIA headquarters in Virginia. We're still time-wise August 1981, everybody. Now, I know what chain of events are happening here, but Helmut, would you care to reveal to the audience what and why is going on here? What's the importance of this part of the book to the overriding plot?
At this point, the three have been in Panama City and done their homework with the Dr. Strangelove of swimmer defense, where they've learned all sorts of things that they find a hard time believing and digesting. They also are building a relationship with Jose Vasquez, who is one of the senior managers at the Navy base and basically has been put in charge by their director of dealing with Alex and his team. They start building a personal relationship with Jose. He has him over to his house. They have dinner with him and his wife. And that becomes important because that relationship is going to not only strengthen through this book, but also carry on into future books. That really is the end of the next chapter. They're waiting to meet a person named Eli Morantz, who is the smartest chief scientist at Panama City at the Navy base. Eli Morantz is brilliant. He was born in Romania. He was raised in Israel and came to the U.S. And he has actually read the Bible in Hebrew. Brilliant man, and based in real life on a character that I worked with very closely in Panama City and shared a lot of patents with, actually. And so they meet Eli, and they basically are very impressed with him. And it happens that we learn in this series of chapters that the CIA, Alex's boss, Richard McMaster, has actually known Eli and the director of the lab in Panama City, Dr. David Flair, for a long period of time. In fact, they they have the high-level clearances that they get to know what's going on at selected parts of what CIA operations that they participated in. So we see the relationship building, the team building between the Panama City Warfare Center and the CIA. Now we're moving on back to Panama City Beach in chapter 13. I think we've already, oh, yes. So basically, Dr. Morantz and Jose take the three, Alex and his team, to the Naval Experimental Dive Unit in Panama City. This is where every government diver in the United States gets their training. Except for the Navy SEALs, they have their own training programs that they go through. What they are doing here at the Naval Experimental Dive Unit is interviewing combat swimmers that the dive unit trains, U.S. combat swimmers, because Dr. Morantz has pointed out that if you want to learn how to defeat a combat swimmer, maybe the best way to learn that is by going to real combat swimmers and learning how they plan their missions. So he coins the phrase, swimmer defense is won over combat swimmer training, if you will. And so they do their homework and they learn a number of things. They learn about all the capabilities that the Navy has at this laboratory, sensors, small high-resolution sonars, the types of things that can be used to detect a swimmer or diver. Finally, what they learn in this session is they come across an unmanned system, which is basically a surplus Navy torpedo, the Mark 37 torpedo. Panama City has inherited over 100 of these things. They're busy turning them into mobile mines for the U.S. Navy, the submarine Navy. And it turns out the Mark 37 torpedo is important to follow throughout the book. You will see it develop.
Oh, indeed you do, everybody. Indeed you do. Now, Helmut, let's expose a little bit of what you're talking about in chapters 27 to 30. As I said, everybody, we're giving you sound bites as to what's in the book. And so, chapters 27 to 30, and I believe you want to say a few words about the terrorist swimmers having a bad day. You head up the chapters Port of Aden, Yemen, Middle East, Washington, D.C., Black Lagoon Laboratory, Maryland, and Tehran in Iran. We're late August, early September 1981 here on the timeline. So take us through this part of the book and without giving too much away. Now, you wanted to put in this chapter 27 because you wanted to talk about the terrorist swimmers having a bad day. So I thought, okay, I'll let him run with this one. Off you go.
Of course. So the terrorists, having had their success with the first U.S. warship, they now think they're pumped. They decide to send there are two American warships now that have arrived, new ones. And their leadership decides, the Hezbollah leadership, that they're not only going to go after one of these new warships, they're going to go after both of them. And they're going to send two dive teams this time. Each pair of divers has a limpet mine that they carry between them. They feel very confident based on their first success. And so basically they have two terrorists with one limpet going after one of the destroyers, two terrorists with the other limpet going after the other destroyer. They're wearing their Draeger rebreather units, which don't make bubbles, so they can avoid detection. And they feel confident. And as they enter the areas around the ships, which are floating barriers, kind of define the barrier around the ship, all of a sudden, terrible things happen. Everything falls apart. They are terrified. These divers are terrified. And basically, the mission falls apart. Of the four, three completely disappear. One happens to make it back to his the Hezbollah float where they started out from, and he basically is so upset and shaken by what he saw that he announces to his leadership that he would rather go on a suicide mission instead of go back in the water with a diver against an American ship. The captains of the two Navy ships are very ecstatic with Alex's team, who happened to be there to observe. And I think that's probably all I'll say, is except neither of the warships blew up, and the terrorists are now very rattled.
He's not giving much away, everybody. Believe you me, he's not giving much away. I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best, everybody's not giving anything away here.
They were terrified by what they encountered. The one that reappeared, the other three disappeared. Now we get into the next chapter, chapter 28. We're back in Washington, D.C. now. And by the way, for this particular mission, Alex, Catherine, Eva, and Alvin, who is an ex Navy SEAL, who is their prime diver at CIA now, he's part of their team now. And Alvin will be worth paying attention to. He goes throughout the story in future books. But they get to enjoy flying back and forth between the Middle East and Washington in a CIA Gulfstream, in a leased Gulfstream jet. So they're traveling in style. The reason that they're doing this is because it makes it a little easier to protect them and stay undetected to get in and out of the Middle East, out of people places like Yemen. And also, there is a special agent Smith that appears later in the book that you will want to pay attention to. Special Agent Smith tends to travel with Pelican cases loaded with things that probably would not be welcome at airports. So the way to get around that is he takes them on the CIA jets. And he has a purpose, usually has a purpose. Let's see, what else do I want to say here? The CIA has learned through their human intelligence that the terrorists are telling their bosses they'd rather go on a suicide mission than go back in the water with a diver, as a diver, which is a huge success. That's basically the end of that. Now we get into chapter 29, which is at a laboratory that the CIA has in Maryland, in an undisclosed location. They call the Black Lagoon Laboratory. They don't use that name very much. The name's classified. That is the laboratory where you may say Remora came out of, as well as other interesting inventions that appear in this book and future books. There's another concept, and I don't know if I'm going to get into what the specific functionality of the concept is, but besides Remora, there's another solution for dealing with terrorists that are coming in small boats that is being developed there. And basically, Alex and the team are learning about this technology. And there's a prototype being built by this laboratory. It was Alex's concept. And it will appear at some point in the Middle East, since they've shifted from divers to boats in the Middle East, to suicide boats. This particular concept will now deal with the boats, since they're afraid to put divers in the water at this point. So they're avoiding Remora, but they're about to walk into something just as bad. They just don't know it. This gets us into chapter 30. We're in Tehran. The leader of the Hezbollah maritime organization, Hassan Nasrallah, is worried because he's lost terrorist swimmers. He failed to sink warships, and he gets to go in front of the Iran Revolutionary Guards Council and defend himself. And he has a hard time doing that. They're not very happy with him. So they're looking at, so what are you going to do now? How are you going to get around this? And so basically, he gives him his idea of avoiding the swimmers and sending in boats, not mentioning to tell them that his divers are too terrified to go into the water. They prefer to die in a boat. So I think that takes us to the next question that you had, John.
It does. You see, he's just giving you all little snippets, everybody. That's what it's all about. So I have to say, for me, Helmut, as I was reviewing the book, the area around chapters 37 to 40 appealed to me. Now, we're halfway through the book, and we've got Alex's birthday party. Now, I seem to think Alex has quite a few birthday parties in these books. There's a birthday meal, there's Ava, there's Catherine. They're teasing Alex about some of his sexual activities. And then Special Agent Smith, you've already mentioned, he's appearing. He's tailing Ava for her protection in case the Iranians or Hezbollah might try to do something. I'm not going to say what. If you want to know, get the book. We've got a small gathering of friends at Cocoa Beach. Alex and Catherine share in a few moments, and you mainly keep the reader in Panama City Beach in Florida. But in chapter 40, you switch to Tehran in Iran. Babak Azimimi, Hassan Nasrallah's replacement, has a meeting with the Supreme Leader and the Revolutionary Guards. And I probably think that you wouldn't want to have a meeting with the Supreme Leader of Iran or the Revolutionary Guard Council. You'd probably avoid them like the plague. But here we are. Helmut's decided he's going back to the inner sanctum of the Supreme Leader's place. Now, I think the tide is about to turn here. You know, you're ratcheting up the narrative here. So we go from a soft party chit-chat to the harsh reality of Tehran. Would you care to reveal what you're doing here to the reader?
Yes. Here in these sections, more of the complex relationship between Alex and the girls is developing. You notice John mentioned that Ava heads back up north while Catherine and Alex go to Panama, to Cocoa Beach, Florida, to watch a space shuttle launch. The background there is that Ava cannot ever go back to Cape Canaveral because in her previous life as Anna, in book number 1, she was involved in a terrorist conspiracy that took place at Cape Canaveral with the Pershing missile system. And so the CIA had to deep six her, hide her in Cuba for a year, change her identity, so she can never touch anything near Cocoa Beach or Cape Canaveral ever again. So she, unfortunately, Alex has been invited to go watch a space shuttle launch, the second space shuttle launch at Cape Canaveral, and he can take Catherine with him, but he can't take Eva. So Eva goes back up north, and Smith, as John mentioned, is her bodyguard. They go on to, he drives over with Catherine in his Porsche to Cape Canaveral. They basically come together with friends of Alex's. So there's a little bit of a relationship building between other people that Alex has known in Europe and Catherine. You get a little bit of a glimpse into what it was really like at the Cape back when the space shuttle launches went up. I happened to have been there on top of the blockhouse, the Pershing blockhouse, when the first space shuttle went up. And that was very exciting. Not many people know that the first 4 space shuttles had ejection seats in them, and also were equipped with what's called a struck box, high explosives that if one of those, NASA didn't really know what those shuttles would do when they launched. If one of those shuttles had gone over a populated area, they would have blown it up. And so their brilliant idea was to put ejection seats in them. It turns out that the astronauts were not very big fans of these ejection seats because they ejected sideways out the doors. And if you recall, there are 2 very flammable, fiery boosters on the side of the shuttle. And so they would eject, and they felt that they weren't really interested in ejecting into this fire column from these boosters. So
they'd be toast. They'd be toast.
Oh yeah. So they I don't think they would have ever used them, but anyway, so that's kind of a lighthearted moment. That gives you a little bit of a break there. That leads us into chapter 39, where basically the actual launch takes place. And then chapter 40, as Don mentioned, we go back to Tehran. Now it says that Hassan Nasrallah's replacement, Babak Azimi, has an idea that he came up with to counter the ship defense systems. So something bad has happened. And you notice that I said that Hassan Nasrallah's replacement, what happened to Hassan? Well, you have to read the book to find out, but it probably wasn't pleasant.
It wasn't pleasant, everybody. It wasn't pleasant. But read the book.
Thankfully quick, though. But basically, it's kind of the CIA defeats them when they try something, and then they come up with something else to try. So we're now in this game of do something else, get defeated again, try something else. And the people that get to do all the trying are the terrorists that are not very excited about getting to do all this trying because they're dropping like flies. So basically, Tehran, they're told to basically, they come up with another idea. And this time what they're going to do is come at a U.S. ship with 2 small boats at the same time from opposite angles. They think that might work. So that's their brilliant idea, that they float past the Iran leadership, and they're told, yes, go try that. We shift back to CIA at this point, and McMaster is looking at a live satellite feed of another U.S. warship burning and sinking. Their idea worked. They went in with 2 small boats. The defense systems, the news defense systems, focused on one boat. Meanwhile, the other boat snuck up and blew up the ship. So now we're going to regroup again and find out, okay, what do we do now? That's the end of this segment. Now we're at question 6, I think.
Do you know what, everybody? There's so many twists and turns in this book, which there should be in a book. Helmut really does keep you engaged, and Alex keeps you engaged as well. So now the area of the book around chapters 46, 49, you head them up to the Naval Surface Warfare Center at Dahlgren, Maryland. Again, we're back into Tehran, and then we've got the Coastal Systems Station, we've got Panama City, we've got Aden Harbor in Yemen. And when I look at this part of the book, there's all these locations you're taking the reader to, Helmut. And in this section of the novel, I'm just wondering, where are you taking the reader here? What's happening? And give us a little insight as to the backdrop as to what's cracking off here, because there's a lot cracking off here now. You're racketing up the storyline again.
Yes. The reason that they visit the Naval Surface Warfare Center in Dahlgren, Maryland, in chapter 46, is because ultimately, after CIA comes up with their prototypes, the ones that are successful need to be transitioned into the Navy operationally. That's a very important thought. It doesn't do to have one-offs, onesies, twosies, to protect one Navy ship. You have got to protect them all. And to do that, at some point, the CIA has to step back, get out of that, and go on to something else. And the Navy Warfare Centers, the laboratories, need to develop the full operational capability for the Navy. That's what's happening when they go to Dahlgren. Dahlgren is the warfare center in the Surface Warfare Center in the Navy that handles surface guns, surface attack, things like that. There's a Naval Underwater Warfare Center, which doesn't appear in this book, which happens to handle undersea things like submarines. But Dahlgren handles the surface. And since we're really dealing with terrorist threats at the surface, that's why they're there. By the way, you learn an interesting little aside in this chapter. They take a tour of Dahlgren, and Dahlgren is developing something called the electric railgun. I mentioned this as kind of as a point of humor, but it's kind of interesting for the audience because the railgun is real. Back then, it was just a glimmer in a bunch of engineers' eyes. But the railgun is very important because at some point in the future, Navy guns, American Navy ships will not have explosive guns on them. They will have electric guns, railguns. It's an electric field that massively accelerates a plastic cube, believe it or not, to such a high velocity that's the kinetic energy of the cube is what destroys the target. And so the idea is you're not going to run out of ammo because you can carry lots of cubes on the ship. They're small. They're not very big. So I just thought that would be an interesting aside because that really is something that Dahlgren is doing. But that carries us to chapter 47. We're back in Iran now. And basically, they're anxious to get in front of Imam Khomeini, the Revolutionary Guard, to basically see what they're going to do with what their plan is for their next attack on the Americans. They've modified their small boats. They think they have a new way to attack, and so basically, the Imam cautiously, disgruntledly tells them, "Go do it." I don't know if he's expecting great results or not. Now we shift back to the Coastal Systems Station in Panama City, the laboratory in Panama City, and let's see what's going on in this one. I have to see. They find out that Alex and the girls are down there, I think, to retrieve their sports cars, which they've left there for a long period of time. They're about to drive them back up north. But while they're there, they learn that through a coded message from their boss that their new inventions that have been perfected by Dahlgren and the CIA lab are on their way to Yemen for operational deployment. they're going to go get used against the terrorists. So again, that's their cue to get ready to come back up north and fly out of Washington to go to Yemen to join that team. And that's where they learn. That's where the girls learn, or actually Alex at this point too, a little more about Agent Smith, because Smith has been assigned to be their bodyguard. Their boss tells them that this time for the first time, and this sends a chill up their spines because in earlier books they saw a little bit of evidence of what Agent Smith does. He has taken out a couple of people that became inconvenient at various times, so they're a little nervous around him. But that's what's going on. They're going to be heading back over. They go back to Yemen, and they land. They go back. This time they're protected. They stay at the Navy quarters instead of in a hotel because they're concerned. CIA is concerned for their safety, because as they get more and more involved with Hezbollah, they might become a target if Hezbollah identifies them. So basically, Smith is now introducing his cohort, Special Agent Cooper. They're going to be accompanying the Alex and the girls for the rest of this trip to Yemen. That becomes interesting of its own in a chapter that's not included here. But it's good that Smith is there to protect them. Let's just leave it at that. But basically, the terrorists now come up with their wooden boats. They think they've really got this knocked, that they're going to come at from two sides like they did previously, and all of a sudden things go south for the terrorists once again. Not good. And the ones on shore, they're operatives that are watching through the powerful binoculars. They look at each other in confusion. What happened? And they're not particularly thrilled at having to go back to Hezbollah leadership and explain what happened. Needless to say, they had a bad day. Again, that takes us to the next question, I think.
So let's go. Helmut, we all love the excitement of a new car, don't we?
Yes.
Getting the new car, you get the smell of the new car, and particularly, well, it might not be a new car, brand new, but a car that, a classic car. And of course, here we're talking about Ava has her eye on a classic Italian sports car. And in chapter 56, Ava's still admiring her new car, and Agent Smith, here he comes, who has been protecting Ava and Alex and Catherine to a degree, gets a call, and he has to leave Panama City Beach. It's fascinating to see what are Hezbollah up to, why the call, and why the urgency. Who wants to steal Ava? And in chapter 58, we're in Aden, in Yemen, a Navy Remora, on a fishing boat. Say no more. I have to say here, Helmut, I think your imagination is running riot here. So would you care to tell the audience what journey you and the characters are taking us all on? Because you are taking us on a journey here. You and Alex and Catherine and Ava, you're taking us on one heck of a journey.
Yes. So starting at chapter 55, we find the Alex and the girls back in Panama City, as John said. But the background behind why they're in Panama City now is because think about the fact that they have spent so much time now in Yemen and Aden. They have been there numerous times when things did not go well for the terrorists. The terrorists are not stupid. They have people with binoculars watching the American activities, and they notice their faces. They notice their faces in several times when bad things happened. And so, as I said, they're not stupid. They put two and two together, and they figure out that these people are not good for us. They suspect they're something like CIA. They don't know what they really are. But what it means is the Iranians are infuriated by the fact that the CIA might have them involved in these activities that are killing all their missions and killing their terrorists. So basically, they become targets for assassination. Now, think about the fact that they're in the Middle East, which makes them very vulnerable compared to being back in the United States. So the CIA decides that the best way they can protect them is by sending them down to Panama City, not to stay in a hotel where everybody can see them, but to get a condo for them on the beach. So not a bad sentence if you want to know that they stay there for a couple of months in a condo on the beach, overlooking the ocean. They make do. They make do. But the reason that the sports cars come up again is because a long, long time ago, Alex had given Eva an Alfa Romeo that he had had for years when he left for Europe along in book number 1, and she went to jail in Cuba, actually. But basically, the Iranian spies in the U.S. happens to have a photograph that they took of Eva now, leaving the CIA headquarters in her silver Alfa Romeo. The CIA finds out about this. They get the picture, and basically they let her know that she has to get rid of her Alfa Romeo because it's identified with her. So she's very sad. It's a beautiful little car. So now, in consolation, when they're all three living in their condo on the beach, they're helping Eva thumb through classified magazines to find her a replacement sports car. And as John mentioned, she stumbles across a car that actually is one of my favorites in the real world, a 1972 De Tomaso Pantera. Alejandro De Tomaso was an interesting man. He escaped from Argentina as a political escapee, moved to Florida, built beautiful sports cars, and the De Tomaso Pantera was probably his best one. It was a beautiful car. It was a mid-engine light sports car powered by a Ford 351 Cleveland V8 engine, a monster of an engine. If you look up these cars, they're achingly beautiful. Eva finds one and they buy it. She buys it and they go with her and all that. So basically, then chapter 56 goes through this business of getting the car. And we're talking about basically how they're living life. And the important thing in these chapters is their relationship becomes more complex. It builds, it becomes more complex. They grow closer to each other. They're at this point, they're inseparable. And I won't go into the complexity of their relationship, but it becomes pretty complex. And their boss at CIA is aware of their relationship, but he turns the other way as long as they keep it discreet. We'll leave it at that. But now we're in chapter 57. Let's see. They're basically, it turns out that when they left Yemen with the help of Special Agent Smith and his cohort, they were ambushed. They were chased by Hezbollah, actually even by Iranian Revolutionary Guards. That because the Yemen is incensed at the fact that they would have the nerve to do what they did in the Middle East. So he goes after them. He sends his people after them. They do escape, but the escape is pretty harrowing. And the interesting thing that comes out of the escape regards Eva. I've mentioned that Smith is kind of a scary person, Agent Smith. So is Eva. Eva may be beautiful, very, very intelligent. She's also very lethal. She travels everywhere with a 9mm automatic and a stiletto in her purse, and she knows how to use them. In fact, she has used them. Okay, and basically, the big thing that comes out of this escaping their ambush over there before they go hide in Florida is that Eva ended up killing 5 of the terrorists, and the big question as they're checking on her afterward with the CIA in finding out from her what happened, they asked her, so how many rounds did you fire in your automatic pistol? She had an automatic pistol at the time, and she says 10. She basically double tapped each of the 5 guys in the forehead with 2 bullets, and the reason she didn't go to full auto is she wanted to conserve her ammunition. So they're all pretty amazed at her.
All 3 of these characters, Alex, Catherine, and Ava, they are very dominant characters, everybody. And they might appear in the book as gentle at times, but you wouldn't want to cross them, particularly Ava. She can be cold-hearted. I'd like to now move on, Helmut, if we don't mind, I want to go to chapter 62 to 64. It's Christmas on the beach. So it's a hard time here, everybody. Christmas on the beach. Hezbollah know how to disengage the Remoras. And the supreme leader in Tehran is issuing new instructions on what his spy network has been telling him. The terrorists know they can remove a Remora, potentially without it being detected. I think this is you starting to dash to the finishing line here with this book.
Yes, the terrorists come up with a new idea, as John mentioned. They find out how to get their hands on Remora. They again, they think they're very successful. They're very happy. They think this they now got the key to dealing with the CIA finally, basically. And unfortunately, it goes sour on them again. They are we sort of closing up at the end, John? Okay, so basically, where we're at is the CIA surprises them once again. This time, it's a brilliant idea that Catherine has actually as they're brainstorming, but they come up with another great idea. They send a countermeasure to the Middle East, and the terrorists who think they've now they know how to handle Remora, find out that that might not be the case, falls apart in disaster for them again, and that's pretty much
It is,
it.
everybody. It's pretty much what that section is. It's the dash towards the end. Now, not going to right towards the very end, but I want to go to the last area, and that is chapter 70-72. Now, I notice in this section, Helmut, there's a lot of diagrams here. So can you very, very briefly explain to us what these diagrams are and why have you put them there?
Yes, that's in chapter 71.
Yeah.
I don't want to give away what those diagrams are about, but what I will say is that Remora was a real life invention, and you're looking at the inventor, okay? And it had a certain purpose that it was created for, or that it was proposed to be created for. It never got created, but there were lots of other applications that it could be useful for. So they're busy in the process of closing basically the CIA closing their case here, handing over everything to the Navy laboratory, and then moving on to the next problem. So those diagrams summarize the other uses of Remora, and they're very interesting.
Take a look at them, but you're going to have to go through the book, everybody, to understand what they're about. Now, I'm just going to ask one very, very, last question here. What percentage of this book is based on reality?
If you read the book, then at the back of the book, I have started including in my books something I call author's notes at the back. What you will find in the author's notes of this book is copies of the cover pages of 2 U.S. patents that I happen to be the inventor, the exclusive inventor of one of them, and a co-inventor on the other one. And so the concept of Remora is actually my concept in real life, was my concept. I was actually I probably would have been able to get to the point of building a prototype of some of these things in Panama City while I was working at the Navy laboratory there. But I left to work for NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and everything stopped. So there is the technical parts of this book have a lot to do with me. I will leave it up to the reader to decide if there's any of me and Alex Beck. I'm not going to say yes or no to any of that. I'm not going to deny or confirm any of that, especially with my wife.
What a diplomatic answer, everybody. So this is a book, everybody, which really is set, in Tehran. It's set in Yemen. It's set in the Middle East. It's set in Panama City Beach in Florida. And it's in the time zone of August 1981 to January, February 1982. That's where the book is set. And you want to know more about the story, well, go and buy it because this is absolutely fascinating. Now, you've already hinted at here, Helmut. So we're closing the interview on that book here, but I want to know is, How many more of these books are you going to do in this Alex Beck series?
I anticipate at least book 5 and book 6. Book 4 is already written and submitted for publishing. I at least will do a 5 and a 6 because I've already got the concepts formulated for them, the timelines. Beyond that, I'll have to see. I may depart from the Alex Beck series and do some different kind of action fiction. I may continue the Alex Beck series. Don't know yet. Depends on where I am with the when I get to the end of my ideas.
I mean, who would you like to see reading your books?
The same people that
Who are they aimed at? Who are they aimed at?
They're aimed at people that enjoy reading Tom Clancy, that enjoyed reading Alistair MacLean, people like that. They're fast paced. They're intended to be fast paced action adventure books that have the reader, when he ends one chapter, want to go into the next chapter. That's kind of what I'm attempting to do, and I came up with a lot of. I have about during my time in the government. At least in the Department of Defense part of the government, I hold about 10 patents on different crazy ideas that I came up with, some of my own, some with my co-inventors. And a lot of these books are basically my opportunity to share my ideas with the public because the Navy is a very conservative organization. They do not change very quickly. And a lot of my ideas tended to be a little radical. And so I'm having fun basically just sharing them. I don't want to keep them bottled up inside me. So these books are my mechanism to share my ideas.
So where can people get your books from?
What's that?
Where can people get your books from?
The best way to go is Amazon. They're all on Amazon. My publisher is Amazon KDP. And if you go onto Amazon, all you have to do is type my name, Helmut Portmann, in the query bar, and my books pop right up. They're available. That's the best place to get them, I would think.
And I suggest you go and get them, everybody, but read them in sequence.
It's best that way.
You won't understand them out of sequence. You have to read in sequence. All I have to say is thank you, Helmut, for coming on the show again and talking to me about your third book. And as I said, you get better and better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure.
I'm JT Crowley. Thanks for listening, watching, wherever you're in the world. Until next time, stay safe.